Assalamu alaikum, participant. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Dr. Shadad is having a trouble with his computer. Hopefully it will be resolved. The issue will be resolved soon, and then we'll see him in the session. So I appreciate your patience, and we are hoping to see him in the meeting very soon. Assalamu alaikum to all the participants. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Shadad Saleem is having a little bit issue with the computer. He is restarting it, so hopefully we'll be seeing him in the session very soon. While we are waiting, I would like to just give you a few notes about the series. It's a dedicated question and answer series, which we run once a month, and it's going to be our 10th session of this series. We are looking forward to all your questions, and we'll be hoping that we can take all of your questions and answer them. So just bear with us for a few more minutes, and hopefully we'll see him in the session. Also, knowing this is just a Q&A session, there is no lecture involved. So you may started queuing up. So as soon as Dr. Shadad joined, we can start taking up your questions. There's a raise hand option that you can raise your hand. You can also leave your name in the chat box if it's kind of hard or you can't find the option to raise hand. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for staying on this platform. I'm hoping that Dr. Shadad will be joining us in another minute or so. I appreciate your patience.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely sorry for this delay. There was a computer glitch. I had to restart it, and it took more than the usual time. So over to you, Mariam.
Alaikum, Dr. Shadad. I'll be moderating the session today.
Okay.
And on behalf of you and all of us, I welcome all the participants here. We already have raised hands, so without a further delay, we can start taking up the questions. The first question comes from Naushad Shafkat. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sab. Dr. Sab, would like to know the stance of Muslims we should have towards the gay community. How are we to treat them?
Okay.
How are we to interact with them? And what is their position in our society? Are they to be treated as outcasts or not? Thank you.
So this is an extremely important question, and I've been addressing it earlier as well. So my understanding of this issue is that we have to treat them in a very respectful way. We must never regard them to be outcasts. They are children of God, so to speak, and we might have a different opinion regarding what they believe or what they practice, but this certainly does not mean that we have to cut ourselves off with them or in any way regard them to be lowly or belittle them in any way. We should fully respect them. We should think that a person has his or her own challenges, and the choices that he or she makes is something which God has absolutely given that person the liberty to. And I'd like to give you an example from the Quran, which tells us how important it is not to ostracize ourselves, not to cut off ourselves from such people. So we know from the Quran that the most thing which is detestable in the eyes of God is polytheism or shirk. So at one place in the Quran, it is said that if the parents of some person, they are polytheists, then this should not in any way make that person leave his parents or her parents if they are insisting on something which relates to polytheism or shirk. But in fact, the Quran says, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, that in spite of the polytheistic practices of your parents, and in spite of the fact that they might be insisting that you also adopt them, yes, you should not adopt them, but you should behave with them in a very, very kind and an affectionate way and treat them with the same kindness as parents are to be treated. This shows that the most detestable of things in the eyes of God, even if that is being practiced by someone, it does not in any way warrant the fact that anyone should ostracize or cut themselves off. So if this is the case with polytheism, we can well imagine that the LGBTQ community or the gay community, if they exist in our society, then we certainly should not follow what generally is the trend here, because as we can clearly see that the Almighty detests polytheism, but even regarding polytheism, it says that if people as close as your parents practice it, you have to behave with them in a very affectionate way. And I think it is here that we also need to understand that there are some very, very grave mistakes that are being made by our traditional scholars because of the fact that they think that these are condemnable people, they are condemned to hell, and so therefore we should have nothing to do with them. So without understanding the fact that the punishment which came on the nation of Lot, because that is what is generally cited in support of the fact that they are condemned by God, and therefore we should also not make any friendship with them or maybe come close to them. So wherever this punishment of Lot is mentioned in the Quran, you'll find out that their punishment, the punishment was given to them, was through a storm of stone hurling winds. The Quran calls it hasiba. And at every instance, it points out that the reason for this punishment was because they had denied messenger of God, and they had clung to polytheism themselves. And for polytheistic practices, nations of God, they are punished by death, of course. And these storms and these cyclones, these stone hurling storms, they had destroyed them. So it was not primarily for the acts of homosexuality that they indulged, for which they were punished. So they were primarily punished for being mushriks, for polytheists, and on top of that, of course, having this malpractice as well. So I think in all, it is this particular aspect that we need to understand, that every person has been given the choice to choose between the sexuality that he would like for himself or herself. And that choice is something which is between him or her and God. And as far as other people are concerned, we should, of course, have a congenial relationship with them, in spite of the fact that we might differ with them. This difference of opinion is like, for example, in any other matter. So we would not agree with the person who is living with a girl without marriage relationships, without a formal marriage contract, and they are living in a way that married people live, and they even father and mother children. So just as for such people, we would say that we would not agree with the stance that they have adopted, but in spite of the fact that we do not agree, we would still uphold their rights. We would still say that they should not be discriminated in any way. They should not be oppressed in any way. So if we support these basic rights that they have, this doesn't mean that we are supporting their stance. All that it means is that we would like the state and the country laws to view them with equality. So this is how my understanding of this question that you have asked goes.
Thank you so much. Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shazad. Dr. Shazad, I recently read a report that Australia exports 1 million cattle yearly to Indonesia from their ranches. Now, Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world. The cattle are slaughtered by a non-lethal stunning process to knock them out before slaughtering them. Some Islamic countries consider this non-halal, but Indonesia has found it to be in line with Islamic practice, and it provides millions of Indonesians with beef and creates jobs. I would like your opinion regarding this practice, because not all Muslim countries agree with it.
So you see, this stunning practice, which is adopted in various countries, is basically meant to stop the animal from showing aggression at the time of being slaughtered. It does not kill that animal in any way. It does not in any way sever its relationship with life in any way. So if the stunning process, as I have understood from various instances, is just a measure which is adopted to blunt the animal from showing any aggression at the time of slaughter. It's just put to sleep. And in that sleeping position, or that sleeping situation or status, the animal can be easily slaughtered. And it is after slaughter that the blood is made to flow out of its veins, which is the normal practice. So I don't see any problem with that. Yes, if the stunning process is such that it puts the animal to death, then it is something that can be objected to, but this is not generally the case. I have been asked this question by some authorities who work for this, for such concerns and facilities, and they have specified. So I got a question from it was from the US, and also perhaps another from the UK, because they have this stunning also. They also adopt the stunning method, and I specifically asked them, does this stunning kill the animal, or does it just puts it to sleep? And they said that it doesn't kill the animal. So the general principle is that if stunning does not kill the animal, it just blunts its aggression or puts it to sleep, puts it into a state of unconsciousness, then this cannot be objected to.
Dr. Saad, also in Saudi Arabia, I understood that during Hajj, they also stun the animal and they play a video cassette saying Bismillah Rahman Rahim. So then the animal can be slaughtered. I don't know if this is correct. So if this is the process in Indonesia and in Saudi Arabia, so you could have a tape running and saying Allah's name without somebody having to set it, and it can be slaughtered by a machine.
Yes, I would agree with that. As long as the name is being taken, it doesn't matter that it is taken by a living person or a machine, because you see, the condition of slaughter is fulfilled, that you are taking the life of that animal by pronouncing the name of God. And when you pronounce the name of God, which is actually Bismillah Allahu Akbar, through this particular statement, we seek his permission. We seek God's permission to slaughter the animal. And I've been discussing this earlier on as well, at a number of instances, that when we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, this is a formal permission from God to take the life of an animal. And if we don't say these words, then we are not even authorized to take the life of an animal. So basically, it's an authority or a permission that we get when we take this name or this statement. And as I said, it's not essential that the statement be uttered by a professional slaughterer. It is equally good if this is done by a machine or by a tape recording.
So it can be slaughtered by a machine, not necessarily
Yes,
by hand.
it can be slaughtered by a machine. Yeah. If the procedure which is adopted is correct, which is that you cut the jugular vein, the life vein of the animal, such that the blood pours forth, and there's no blood left within the animal. And if this is done, the machine is also pronouncing the name of Bismillah Allahu Akbar, or the name of God, to seek permission, then both these are machine-oriented processes, and in my view, they cannot be objected to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the clarification. Josefa, please go ahead, unmute your mic and ask a question.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. डॉक्टर साहब, आपको याद होगा मैंने आपसे पहले वो बुक ऑफ जेनेसिस वाले में बात की थी कि हजरत इब्राहिम अलैहिस्सलाम ने अपने भाई हारान की भाई की बेटी से शादी की थी, सारा जिसमें से हजरत इसहाक अलैहिस्सलाम पैदा हुए थे। तो उसकी मुझे वो रेफरेंस मिल गया, तो उसकी रेफरेंस बुक ऑफ जेनेसिस 17 और वर्स नंबर 16 है। तो मेरे पास
what does it say? Are you telling us that Isaac was a nephew of Abraham?
No, नहीं, वो हजरत इब्राहिम अलैहिस्सलाम के खुद बेटे थे। और जो मैं असल में पूछना ये चाह रहा था कि कुरान तो कहता है कि हजरत आप अपनी भाई की बेटी से शादी नहीं कर सकते, मगर आप बुक ऑफ जेनेसिस का मुताला करें तो उसमें लिखा हुआ है कि हजरत इब्राहिम अलैहिस्सलाम ने अपने
Yes, I understand your question. I think I answered this question earlier on as well, and I had explained that as far as the prohibition of relationships is concerned, it has gone an evolutionary process. In the very beginning, the only relationship which was prohibited was incestual relationship, which means that you could not have any sexual relation with your parents. And as time progressed, some of the other relations, they were inducted in that list of prohibition. And it was not until when the Quran was revealed that marriage between the person and his niece was prohibited, or vice versa. So this is something of an evolution which has taken place and which took place. So I think that we have to understand that.
ठीक है, जज़ाकल्लाह। मेरा दूसरा सवाल आपसे ये है कि मुझे डैन गिब्सन का पता चला, मगर मैंने उनका मुताला इसमें नहीं किया। तो मैं सूरह रोम पढ़ा था, तो सूरह रोम में लिखा हुआ है कि रूमी मगलूब हो गए हैं नजदीक की जमीन पर, और वो मगलूब होने के बाद अनकरीब गालिब आ जाएंगे। जब इस आयत को पढ़ें तो अगर तो देखें पेट्रा जो है, मुझे पेट्रा का इतना खास नहीं पता, मगर जब देखें पेट्रा रोम से 3,3800 किलोमीटर पे पड़ता है। और अगर हम मक्का को देखें तो मक्का तकरीबन 4800 के 4600 के उसके दरमियान में पड़ता है। देखा जाए तो पेट्रा ज्यादा नजदीक पड़ता है रोम के। और वो गालिबन, अगर मैं गलत ना हूँ तो सूरह 3 में भी है ना कि वो क्या कहते हैं, ना तूर सीन के पास, गालिबन सूरह 3 के पहाड़ भी नहीं और जैतून के बाग भी नहीं है वहां पर सऊदी अरब में। तो क्या ये कुछ निशानियां ये नहीं देती कि पेट्रा वो है कि किबला है?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, these are historical fallacies. I mean, established history tells us that the surah which was revealed, which tells us that the Romans, they would once again, they have been subjugated at this time, but against the Persians have subjugated them, but later on these Romans would conquer. They would conquer the Persians, and this actually took place because the words which the Quran uses are fi adnal ard, which means in the nearby territory. And every person has interpreted this verse to mean the country of Rome, and that the fact that they had been conquered by the Persians, and later on they would reconquer, and then Persians would be subjugated. So I think that this Petra issue has been debated upon by many scholars. You can just Google it, and you'll find out that this myth has been debunked.
Okay, Jazakallah.
Thank you. Naseem, please go ahead, ask your question.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम शहजाद भाई।
Wassalam.
अब मेरा एक यहाँ पे एक मसला इसमें थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूजन है कि सूरह नसा की आयत 101 में जो नमाज में तखफीफ का जिक्र है, तो वो उसमें मजीद 100A और 102 को आगे जाके तो वो ज़ाहिरी क्लियर हो जाता है कि वो खौफ की हालत में, यानी कि जंग का मौका है, और तो उसमें मुख्तसर कर दिया जाए नमाज। तो इसमें एक सवाल तो ये है कि जो 102 और 103 में बताया गया है कि एक जमात जब सजदा कर ले तो दूसरी जमात वो अपना असला लेके पीछे हट जाए, दूसरी जमात ज्वाइन कर ले। तो क्या इमाम जो है, जो कि ज़ाहिर है उस टाइम के लिए मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के लिए ये बात है, तो इमाम पूरी पढ़ेगा, वो कंटिन्यू करेगा पूरी, और ये लोग आधी आधी नमाज पढ़ेंगे?
जी, करेक्ट।
ओके। तो और इसके अलावा ये सूरह बकरा की आयत 239 में भी जिक्र है कि जब खतरे से बाहर हो तो नमाजें पूरी कर। ठीक है, तो पूरे कुरान में ये जो हमारे यहाँ जो कसर की नमाज है सफर के दौरान में, हम सफर करते हैं कहीं, ये कहाँ से आया है, इसकी दलील क्या है, कितना डिस्टेंस होना चाहिए? क्योंकि कुरान तो सिर्फ ये 2 जगह बता रहा है, सिर्फ खौफ की हालत। तो ये आम सफर में जो कसर करते हैं, इसकी क्या दलील?
So this is an ijtihad which was done by the Prophet Muhammad, and it was ratified by the Almighty. So basically, he pointed out that the cause of shortening the prayer for jihad, as you just pointed out, was the fact that there was this discomfort and this uncertainty of situation. So by analogy, any other journey in which, or any other situation in which this discomfort and uncertainty is present, so by analogy that was also included. So this was basically an ijtihad done by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was ratified by the Almighty. And there are many other instances in the Quran also in which there is a certain directive given, and the Prophet himself has done a certain form of ijtihad, and at times the Almighty would correct that ijtihad, and at other times he would ratify or confirm it. So in this particular case, all that has happened is that the cause which was present, for which the prayers were shortened during war, was extended by the Prophet to other areas as well. For example, as I said, the cause was uncertainty, discomfort, and the same he extended to general journeys as well, to general travels as well, because when you're traveling, you are in a state of uncertainty, you are in a state of discomfort. And as far as the distance is concerned in which you are required to shorten your prayers, the illah or the cause itself tells us that as long as that discomfort and uncertainty exists, you can continue to shorten your prayer. And as soon as it goes away, you can come back and offer the normal prayer. And this is also corroborated by the practice of the Prophet. So in some journeys, he did qasr at a particular distance. In some other journeys, he did qasr at some other distance, and this kept on varying, which clearly tells us that whenever he felt that discomfort going away, that uncertainty factor going away, he would resume the original amount of prayer. And whenever he would feel that it is there, he would continue to do qasr. So basically, qasr prayer is an ijtihad done by the Prophet on the basis of the Salatul Khawf, which is mentioned in the Quran. And as far as the time period for qasr is concerned, it is left to the individual's discretion, the judgment of the individual. So as long as that person feels the discomfort of a journey, he or she is allowed to do qasr. And as soon as this discomfort and uncertainty goes away, normal prayers have to be resumed.
तो इसमें कोई सेट रूल नहीं है जो फिक्र ने जो बताया कि इतना डिस्टेंस हो या ये
हो? It has been left to our discretion. So it has been left to our judgment. So there's no set pattern. I mean, no distance has been prescribed. As I said, the reason for that is discomfort. And the word discomfort could be different in different journeys, could be different for different people. Because I could feel a certain amount of discomfort in a certain journey, and some of my companions, or maybe someone who's traveling with me, might not feel the same discomfort. So it has been left individually to each person.
तो क्या गाड़ी में से नमाज अदा कर सकते हैं? जैसे हम देखते हैं कि यहाँ बहुत रश है, जैम, ट्रैफिक जैम हो गई, नमाज तो गाड़ी में, जैसे कि 239 में बताया गया कि सवारी क्यों बैठे उठे भी आप अदा कर सकते हैं.
The Quran tells us that you can, for rijalan aw rukbana, whether you are walking, so it's not just while you're riding a car or an aeroplane or any other means of transport. It says when the time of prayer arrives and you are walking, just taking a walk, you're just strolling along, or you are on a transport. In both these cases, you can offer the prayer. And you should not worry about the...
इसमें status कौन सा होगा? पूरी नमाज होगी या
Yes, of course, yes. That would be counted as a full prayer. And as far as the amount of rakats are concerned, then that again would be a question that has to be asked by the person to himself. And he should ask himself that whether he's in a state of discomfort or uncertainty. If that is the case, then the prayer which is offered while walking or other means of transport could be reduced. And if that discomfort is not there, then it should be offered in full.
इसमें से एक छोटा सा ज़ेली से सवाल और मजीद मैं कर लेता हूँ कि इस मामले में हज के मौके पे मैंने देखा, मैं जब अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हज में गए तो वहाँ जो तीनों इमाम हैं वो जो कसर कर रहे होते हैं, लेकिन इमाम अबू हनीफा का इस बारे में राय मुख्तलिफ है, वो पूरी नमाज अदा करने के कायल है.
They have a different opinion, and they offer the full prayer. But I would not agree with his deduction, because basically Hajj symbolizes jihad or struggle in the cause of God, struggle for the cause of God. And this has been specifically prescribed by the Quran, as you just referred to, that in all situations of war, you can do qasr. And Hajj itself is something which symbolizes this jihad. It's like an army going from one place to another, camping at one place to another, going under the leadership of a single person who is leading them. And then finally, it pelts stones at the Jamarat, which of course is the culmination of that jihad. So the whole Hajj actually symbolizes jihad and war and for the cause of the Almighty. And for all such wars, as we can see from the Quran, you can do qasr.
Okay, Jazakallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shadad. Next question that I got, it's in Urdu, so I'll read it for you. पूछा यह गया है कि सुन्नत इजमा और तवातुर से मुंतकिल हुई है, और जिस तरह कुरान महफूज है इसी तरह सुन्नत भी महफूज है. इखलाकियात में भी सुन्नत पाई जाती है, मगर मौजूदा ज़माने में देखा जाता है कि मुसलमानों में इखलाकियात में बहुत कमी हो रही है. मसलन लेन देन ठीक नहीं है, अदब और आदाब ठीक नहीं है, कारोबारी ज़िंदगी में भी बहुत सारे मामलात गलत हैं. सो मच सो कि इंसान को अपनी कारोबारी ज़िंदगी में जो है वो सैलरी हासिल करने वक्त भी मुश्किलात पेश आती हैं. तो इसी तरह की इखलाकी चीज़ें जो हैं वो इखलाकियात में आती हैं और सुन्नत कहलाती हैं. सवाल ये है कि अगर ये सुन्नत है तो इजमा और तवातुर से क्यों मुंतकिल नहीं हुई? इखलाकियात दूसरी कौमों में तो पाई जाती हैं, मगर मुसलमानों में क्यों मुंतकिल नहीं हुई? अगर सुन्नत है तो इन्हें मुसलमानों में भी मुंतकिल होना चाहिए था.
My understanding is this is not a sunnah. Sunnah is always related to something which is practical. I mean, relates to the practical field. This is a conduct which a person adopts. And this akhlaqiyat is actually mentioned at a number of places in the Quran itself. So it's not just, I mean, you should not classify it as a sunnah in any way, in any case. It is in fact the Quran. So as far as the Quran is concerned, you'll find at a number of instances this moral conduct being mentioned. Although the Quran generally does not mention something which is obvious, because our own conscience tells us what right and wrong are, but still at instances it does express morality. So basically morality is something which emanates from our fitra, from our nature. So it's basically human nature, and something which is human nature is unquestionable. I mean, it is far more clear than the Sharia itself. So the Sharia is something which is given when there is something of a lack of clarity. So the Quran, even if it mentions morality, it discusses morality, it is not that it originally or for the first time communicates to us that this is what morality is. It mentions morality just to remind us. So cutting the long story short, that as far as morality is concerned, it is basically the call of our own human nature. It is found in our own conscience. And if we are not adhering to our morality, then what we are doing is that we are ignoring our own conscience. And this is a sign of a weak faith. It is a sign of wrong concepts regarding religion. For example, there's this concept that if you do all kinds of bad things and you do Hajj or Umrah at the end of the year, or do certain other things like maybe offer an animal for sacrifice or feed some people or give in charity, then all the sins that you have done regarding morality would be forgiven. So basically, when we are not adhering to morality, it's not because it's not clear to us. It's more than clear to us, because as I said, we don't need the Quran, we don't need the Sunnah for morality, because it is ingrained in us. So human consciousness knows what morality, what good and bad are. The thing is that it, because of certain personal interests, vested interests, certain ulterior motives, we tend to ignore this. And as I said, this could have different reasons, but one of the reasons is that we feel that if we are able to do so, it will fulfill our own desires. So personal desire is one reason that we ignore morality, and there are other reasons as well. So I think what you need to understand is that it is basically a rebellious nature in our own selves, which at times makes us go away or go far away from morality. It's not that it is unclear to us. It's absolutely clear. Thus, in Surah Qiyamah, the words used are "Bal insanu ala nafsihi basira, walau alqa ma'azira," that you fully are aware of right and wrong. It is only that you fabricate excuses to just do away with it. So it's basically this is what has happened. And as far as other nations are concerned, let us not forget that these nations are also followers of great prophets of God. So they were, for example, if you're talking about the Christians, which are in vast majority all over the world, so don't forget that they are the followers of a mighty prophet of God. So Jesus was not an ordinary person. I mean, he was a prophet of God. So if they are following morality, they are following not only their own conscious self, which is, of course, what they're doing, and they're also following the teachings of their prophet. So if Muslims are not doing that, the reasons have to be found out, other than the fact, then blaming other people or maybe asking that why is it that we have left these things to other nations, because we tend to forget that these other nations are also followers of prophets of God.
Thank you. I got another question, which is in reference to the question that you answered earlier with regards to Book of Genesis, in which there was a reference of marriage with the son or daughter of brother. So they're asking, the moral principles are the same worldwide or time-wise. So why are certain relationships, such as with the niece, were allowed before?
This is because the institution of family developed slowly, and all these haram relationships or these mahram relationships have been developed in relation to the family. So as the family structure and system evolved and it came to a final shape, were those final directives given. And as I said, you can clearly see that the children of Adam married between one another. So because there was no other way. So the children of Adam, the boys and girls, and yes, the theory is that they were far removed from one another. For example, if Adam was maybe 800 years old or 900 years old, so the marriage which took place between brothers and sisters was such that the brothers and sisters were far removed, which means that there was a big gap between them, so that this distance could be felt. But as I said, this is right from the start that marriage between brothers and sisters was allowed. Otherwise, there was no possibility of the family progressing. And it was later on that it was declared as incestuous, and you could not have married your brother or your sister. So you see, as soon as these family relations became strong, these prohibitions were introduced. Otherwise, the single most important prohibition regarding mahram relatives was, as I said before, the prohibition of this relationship with your parents.
Thank you. Another written question that I received says that sins committed against God will be forgiven if we sincerely repent to him. But how we can seek forgiveness from others? If we did something wrong to animals or humans, what should we do? At times it's embarrassing to tell people that we have harmed them and that we are seeking their forgiveness. They have given a couple of examples that if, let's say, they have stolen something or they have killed insects, so how they should go about it and seek forgiveness from them.
Every matter has to be treated separately. Killing an insect is not a sin at all. If they cause a nuisance, or if you kill them inadvertently, unintentionally, this is not something which is culpable or accountable, for which you can be held accountable. Other than that, you have to take each error committed case to case on a case-to-case basis. Thus, for example, the sins which are committed against people, then they have to be atoned. You have to seek not only the forgiveness of God, but you have to seek forgiveness from that person and also try to make amends. For example, if you stole something, then you have to return that thing back and also offer your apology. So it's like it is the general principle which the Quran tells us is tabu wa aslahu, that you have to repent before the Almighty and also make amends, and which means that you seek an apology from the person that you had wronged, and also return, or do whatever it needs to be done to atone for the crime that you committed. And if there is this situation which might arise that maybe you are not able to find the person, maybe he has passed away, or there could be a host of other cases or options. So in that case, I think you have to wait for your meeting with that person in the hereafter and seek that forgiveness at that time from that person. And if he forgives you or she forgives you, then yes, God's forgiveness would also count. Otherwise, as we know from certain narratives of the Prophet, then he or she would be in a position of bargain with you. They would bargain their bad deeds for your good deeds. So some of your good deeds would be transferred, or would be able to delete his bad deeds or that person's bad deeds. So that is a special case in which you are not able to have contact with that person in this world and seek that person's forgiveness. So in that case, as I said, you'll be meeting him or her in the hereafter, and then this would be one of the ways to settle the score.
Thank you, Dr. Shadad. Switching back to the participants in the session, Naushad Shafkat, please go ahead and ask your question.
Saleem, Dr. Another question about the namaz, especially the Isha namaz. People insist that it is 17 rakat, while I've heard from you, Ghamidi Saab, and several others of Farai scholars, that the Prophet never prayed more than 6 rakat in the Isha namaz. Right. The first question is this, and how can we convince those who are insisting on 17? Because it becomes a discouragement to young people, especially, to be in the mosque praying 17 rakat. And the other question is, with regard to namaz, that in the morning, if you miss the morning Fajr prayer while you were sleeping, it is said that as soon as you wake up, the first thing you should do is offer the prayers, and that will be considered to be a Ada namaz. Could you please throw some light on this? Thank you, Doctor.
So as far as your first question is concerned, this is basically the Hanafite interpretation of the prayer. You'll not find the Hanabilas or the Malikis or the Shafi'is who live in other parts of the world prescribing 17 rakat of Isha prayer. This is basically a Hanafite interpretation, and I would suggest that there are two types of people with whom you can debate. There are people who could listen to the voice of reason, or they would be open to discussion. So for such people, of course, you can give the reasoning and tell them that this is a common misconception and this is just an interpretation of a particular jurist that is in practice. And there are other types of people with which there is, discussing or having an argument with them is virtually counterproductive, and they would rather not indulge in your argument. They would become angry, or maybe because of the fact that they themselves have understood religion not on the basis of any reasoning, but on the basis of emotions. For such people, I would say that just ignore them, and if they insist, let them do what they insist on. But as you or yourself are concerned, you can obviously yourself follow the practice that you think right, and also at the same time advise young boys and girls in favor of what you think is correct. However, as I said, if you would like to indulge in a debate with people who hold this view, then, as I said, if a person is conducive to discussion and debate, only then it is advisable. Otherwise, it will just create a bad taste, and instead of solving anything, it will create a rift between you and that person, and which is not a healthy thing, I would say.
Sir, what is the reasoning behind this? The reasoning, how can I give...
Because they divide the optional prayer of the Prophet, which is the Sunnah, into two parts. So they call it Sunnah Muakkada and Sunnah Ghair Muakkada, which means certain prayer which has been emphasized and another prayer which has not been emphasized. So Muakkada is from Taqeed, emphasis. So they divide they actually observe the practice of the Prophet, and because he was offering these nawafil, these optional prayers at various instances, including before the farz and after the farz, So they started counting them, and they said, well, if he's offering them in a very diligent way and in a very punctual manner, and almost every with every prayer, then it must have some emphasis. For such prayers, they have come up with a term called muqqada, which means that it is stressed and emphasized. And similarly, they would add the nawafil from the tahajjud nawafil that they are said to have, people have said to have missed at times because of the fact that the Prophet would pray a certain amount of nawafil at night. And so they have distributed those nawafil with each prayer. For example, you have 2 with Zohar, you have 2 with Maghrib, and we have some more with Isha. So it's like basically adding something to the prayer on the basis of their understanding of the prayer. So it's like a different understanding of what happened.
But Dr. It is said that he never offered prayers more than 6 rakat in Isha.
So this is how this is how we understand. And they would say that this is not correct. I mean, he did offer the nawafil before and after, and he did offer some of the other prayers. So this is a matter of dispute between the rest of the jurists and themselves.
Thank you. Moving forward.
About the Fajr namaz, Dr. The Fajr namaz.
So what was the question?
Dr. That if you
yes,
are unable to wake up
right,
in the morning.
right. So we have been given these glad tidings by the Prophet himself that something of the form of sleep, it does not in any way invalidate your prayer. So, I mean, if you were not able to get up on time, then whatever time you got up is regarded to be the time of the prayer, because had you gotten up and, I mean, for example, you were able to wake up and then you just went back to sleep, or put off the alarm and then went back to sleep, and that would of course not be counted, because that would be a negligence on our part. But if we never had the chance to get up and we just got up, let's say at a XY time, which is much later than the actual time, then that does not count to be a time which invalidates the right time of the prayer, because sleep in itself is something which does not take away the validity of the time of the prayer.
Thank you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
Huzaifa, please go ahead and ask your question.
जी डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा आपसे सवाल था कि सूरह मायदा में अल्लाह ताला फरमाते हैं कि तुम पर जिस पे अल्लाह का ना जिक्र ना पड़ा जाए वो तुम पे गोश्त हराम है, मगर अगली 5वीं आयत में फरमाते हैं कि तुम पे तो अहले किताब का भी ज़िबिया हलाल है। तो इस बारे में कौन सी राय पकड़ी जाए?
Because we see in those times the people of the book also slaughtered their animals by taking the name of God. So remember that when this verse was revealed, al-yawma uhilla lakum at-tayyibat wa ta'amul lazina utul kitaba hillul lakum wa ta'amukum hillul lahum, which means that today all pure things have been made allowable to you, and the food of the people of the book is allowed to you, and your food is allowed to them. So this was the time in which the people of the book also slaughtered their animals in a way that they actually took the name of God. I mean, it's not like today, because the Sharia for the people of the book, and this is in particular true for the Christians, because the Jews even today take God's name. For the Christians, what happened was that the Sharia had been revoked by St. Paul. And so now what they generally have as directives of the Injil are non-Sharia directives, and you'll not find the Sharia being followed by them, although the Torah, I mean, although Jesus himself is reported to have said that he's not come to revoke the Bible, but to complete it. So that's another matter. But but the question that you asked, I would say that in those times, the people of the book also took the name of God when they would slaughter their animals.
जज़ाकल्लाह। मेरा एक और सवाल आपसे ये था कि मुझे वो पूरी
Huzaifa, if you don't mind,
no
if it's not,
no problem.
yeah,
No
thank
problem.
you. We'll
Thank
take
you, bye.
next question from Asif Ali.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab. My question is actually related to the stand of the Frahi school of thought regarding the evolution theory, because just recently, I mean, just now you answered one question where you were saying that Adam and Eve, their children got married, right? So unless the time when there is till the time when there is the institution of family is established. So
right.
we basically say that the Homo sapiens or the evolution theory somehow can be proved or right, then Adam and Eve history is not more than 5,000 or maybe 10,000 years old, and we don't know maybe. However, my question is that how the evolution theory can justify this stand in Quran that Adam and Eve, and there's only one Adam and Eve, and that basically their children got married initially. Can you please just elaborate? Because I know that there are a lot of answers on this questions by Javed Hamdi Saab, but I just want to understand clearly that what is the stand of the Fry school of thought on that.
I think if you listen to him, you might be remembering the fact that the Quran explicitly tells us, "Inna khalaqnakum min nafsin wahida," and then it says that we created its mate from that soul. Nafsin wahida, and it says khalaqa minha zawjaha, and from it created its mate, which means that basically it was one single pair of parents which started off mankind. And then in Surah Sajda, the words used are "Bada'a khalaqal insani min teen," that we started to create mankind through mud, through clay. So if you combine these verses, you'll come to the conclusion that basically a single pair of parents, Adam and Eve, they started off mankind. And initially, people were directly born from earth. So the earth had the same role to play as the womb of a mother does in these days. So people were directly created from earth. And this happened for a long period of time. And then the Quran says that "Bada khalaqal insani min teen, summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min ma'in mahin." Then later on in the next stage, what happened was that mankind was given this ability to procreate, so they could have intercourse, and then children could be produced from them. But initially, they were born directly from earth, and this went on for a particular period of time, as the Quran says, "Bada khalaqal insani min teen." We started to create mankind. We began the creation of mankind through clay. Summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min ma'in mahin, and then from its generations, we created other people who would not be needed to be born from the earth, because for them birth could take place by their procreation, by their intercourse. And then it says "Summa sawwahu," and then perfection was given to it, to those souls who started to procreate and have intercourse. And then it says "Summa sawwahu and ja'ala lakum as-sam'a wal absara wal af'ida," which means that they were given these abilities, which of course means that the soul was sent to that organic mass of people, and from them the first pair of parents were created, which is of course, as I said elsewhere in Surah Nisa, which says that we created this mankind from a single pair of male and female species. So if we combine both these verses, we'll get to know that as far as evolution is concerned, contrary to the Darwinian evolution, the evolution which the Quran talks about is evolution within the same species. So humanoids at first were not able to produce themselves. I mean, they could not procreate, they could not produce children, so they were directly born. And this evolution took place within their own species. This was not that one species transformed into another species and then so on and so forth. The Quran talks about evolution within the same species. So humans were born like humanoids. They were not able to procreate the way they are today. And then slowly this ability was placed in them. And then they were given perfection. And then the soul was blown into it. And then after that soul was blown into it, one pair of parents were selected who were named as Adam and Eve, as we can see from the verse of Surah Nisa. So this is how the Farai's stance is, and you can read more about it if you read the first verse of Surah Nisa, the tafsir of Surah Nisa, in this verse of Farai scholars, as well as this verse of Surah Sajda, which is the 32nd surah of the Quran, in which this evolutionary process is mentioned. And if this is correct, then the only way forward for mankind to have developed would have been that brothers and sisters, and unless they would have gotten married, there was no other way that mankind would have developed, because there was no other species. I mean, there was just one parent from which the rest of mankind was born. So if if they had children, then the only way that the children could produce further children would be through their own intermarriages.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaddad, for answering all the questions in detail. We are reaching the time limit of our session, so we have to end it here, with the note that we will take all the unanswered questions in our next session. So we have noted down all the questions that have been sent in the chat box. So we appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing you next week in Islam Study Circle.
Inshallah. Okay.
Thank you.